Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mike's, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. I am Evan Irwin, and we begin each Top 10 by saying hello to my co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Hi.
Ruben Bressler.
Oh, hi. How are you all doing?
Man, we starting that tater early.
Did I already tater?
Ruben is not on the best of connections, but he's on a connection,
Wow.
and we can
Look,
can hear him
am I on the internet? Is this thing on? Can you hear me?
mostly.
Okay. I
Yes.
apologize. Hopefully this will go off with only a few hitches. I can't promise no hitches, as it's been 10 seconds into the show and already we have jumped the shark. But when you're living in a friend's house and the four people who are living in the house, one of them is doing a live podcast or recording a podcast, and then the two of the three others are playing internet poker, and then the other one is probably raiding WoW. Like, that's what I assume they're all doing. I was trying to get some various different things going, and well, you know, that's what happens. Technology doesn't love me. Also, to be fair, Mercury is in retrograde right now, which means that communication is going to be difficult. So
Is that what that means?
Yeah, if Mercury's in retrograde till the 23rd, so all communication is going to be difficult. Your cell phone might not work. You might have a miscommunication with your loved ones. Other astrological BS. So
that's pretty deep.
Keep that in mind. I know.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, of course I closed it. Well, we also begin with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most prolific in letting us know what card we didn't choose as one of our top 10 Rakdos cards, and that person will get a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com, our awesome sponsor. Ruben, who's the winner this week?
Well, fortunately for us, Brandon M., who is our winner this week, did not have trouble communicating with us in telling us his Rakdos card that he chose. I have to say, a truly awesome, albeit widely known as disappointing, Rakdos card is Rakdos Augur Mage. Modeled after Terry So for winning the Magic Invitational Tournament in 2005, it was the Rakdos card that wasn't supposed to be a Rakdos card at all. A card Wizards botched badly from Terry's vision by changing its color from mono black to Rakdos, and then upping its cost with the color switch from BB to BBR, making his ability a tap ability, and then the visual aspect of hiding Terry's face behind goggles so you couldn't even tell who it was modeled after. This was bad. Compared to many previous invitational cards like Meddling Mage, Shadow Mage Infiltrator, Avalanche Riders, Solemn Simulacrum, and Dark Confidant, as well as the cards created after his, being Ranger of Eos, Snapcaster Mage, and Snapcaster Mage, Rakdos Augur Mage has gone down and will probably forever go down as the worst and biggest invitational card disappointment. But even though it's the biggest disappointment of invitational cards, it's a winner in our book because of the comment from Brandon M.
Wow. Well, I think it was well said. The Augur Mage was like, yeah, it was definitely them pulling the curtain, and there was the donkey, and you're like,
Yeah.
that's what you came up with. For those who don't know,
Yeah, that was pretty rough.
Rakdos Augur Mage is 2 black and a red for a 3/2 human wizard. It was a rare in Dissension. Has first strike. Tap, reveal your hand and discard a card of target opponent's choice. Then that player reveals their hand and discards a card of your choice. Play this ability only anytime you could play a sorcery. So basically, without a tap, requirement there, you could just kind of both make each other discard all your cards, and that sounds like a very bad piece of gameplay.
Well, I think that there was initially they were toying with making it a enter the battlefield trigger, where it was just a 2/2 for 2 that had the ability when it entered the battlefield as opposed to being a tap ability. I think they toyed around with different versions of the ability and ended up with this one, and this one's not great. This one ended up not being exactly where they wanted to be, unfortunately for Terry So.
Well, fair enough. But Brandon M., I want you to get in contact with us on all the social medias. We will be listening. Let us know where you are so we can get you your super cool CoolStuffInc.com gift certificate. And yeah,
with those holidays coming up.
Yeah, holidays going to come up, and we want to get you something cool, such as Unstable, which has been selling like crazy.
Oh my God, Unstable is so good. I'm sure we'll talk about it on Wednesday, but I drafted Unstable for the first time yesterday, and it is a delight.
Well,
Yeah, we went to, I bought my packs on Friday night. We stopped by a local game store and they were packed. Lodestone Games in Minnesota reported they had 5 pods going for F&M, which is 40 people. And yeah, Twitter is full of just Mark Rosewater has been retweeting all of the nice things that people are saying to him. And it just seems to be getting rave reviews, which is, I think, what we need right now. You know, we need kind of a nice, loose time.
Yeah, but the impetus for this top 10, to kind of bring it back home, Brian DeMars wrote an article on December 5th on channelfireball.com called "The 20 Most Important Magic Cards Printed in the Modern Era." And while I know and love and respect Brian, let me tell you, I was not agreeing with his choices, to say the least. Not to mention he actually put like 55 cards on there, but whatever.
Right.
That's fine. So we have a top 10 most important cards in the modern era from each of us, and we're kind of going to work our way through. This is every card.
Love Brian DeMars, by the way. This is dedicated to Brian DeMars. He's a great dude. I've stayed in a hotel with him on more than one occasion at a Magic event. Extremely smart, another vintage all-star, and just a great dude that I remember from growing up back in the Midwest.
Oh, I had no idea that this was going to take off the way that it did. So for those who, don't know, we come up with the things that we talk about on our live show like 30 minutes to an hour before we record. And Evan usually likes to have more topics than none. And so a lot of times we'll just throw things in the document, and we're not sure if Evan will pick them. We're not sure if anybody will care or if we'll even get around to them. And so I was the one who contributed this, thinking that we would just have so much to talk about. It's whatever. And all of a sudden, the 2 guys took one look at it. We're like, we have some thoughts. And it was like, oh, okay. And before I knew it, it was going and going and going. And we had to eventually record the live show. And they were like, we're going to come back to this. And it was like, I just had no idea that this article was going to inspire such passion between Ruben and Evan. And eventually I kind of succumbed to it as well. But it just started off being another innocuous little topic that if we have time, we'll get around to it. Now here we are doing like a rebuttal episode.
There are certain injustices that will not stand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So and we gotta right that ship. So let's get started, because we don't have that many hires or sames this week, which is a good thing. And I like that. But let's get started here with number 10. Ruben, what's your number 10?
We don't have that many hires or sames, but my number 10 is in fact higher on someone else's list.
Wow.
So that's where we'll start kicking things off strong with a traditional Ruben Bressler higher on somebody else's list entry.
Wow. So Aaron, what is your number 10?
My number 10 is a sideboard card, and a lot of my cards tend to meet the criteria of being good in multiple formats. You know, Ruben loves competitive cards. He likes cards that are in winning decks, or, decks that have won tournaments. For me, I look for cards that have been seen in multiple formats with an emphasis on the older formats. To me, that's a sign of a really powerful, impactful card. And my number 10 was originally released in a Commander set, Commander 2014, but had an immediate impact on formats like Legacy and Vintage, where it has even been main deckable at times, depending on where the metagame is at. It has become the bane of my existence. My number 10 is Containment Priest. Why? So this card is 1 and a white. She's a human cleric, 2/2 with flash. If a non-token creature would enter the battlefield and it wasn't cast, exile it instead. So this is a card that is brought in against the Sneak and Show decks. This is a card that's brought in against the Dredge decks, against the Reanimator decks. And what makes this card so good is that you can flash it in. A lot of the answers to those kinds of strategies tend to be artifacts and enchantments, which those decks are usually ready for. We have our Nature's Planes, we have our Ingot Chewers, we have whatever, but those don't work against Containment Priest. You need Abrupt Decay, you need Barbarian Ring, you need Dismember, things that you're probably going to board out anyways because you're not expecting to see this card. And it having flash also makes it very dangerous, because with a lot of the other forms of hate, you just kind of plunk it on the battlefield, which leaves it very open to anti-hate cards. You can time this in such a way where it's just going to hose you. It's just going to be a 2-for-1, be a 3-for-1. And this card is just such bad news. But, it's done a really good job of keeping certain decks out of the format, keeping decks fair. And the fact that you can attack with it. You can't attack with a Grafdigger's Cage. You can't attack with a Rest in Peace, but you can vial her in. And if push comes to shove, she's a 2/2 bear. And so to me, this card has had a huge impact, as much as I don't like it. And it is my number 10.
I love me some good hate bears, Good old-fashioned, whatever you're doing, I don't like it. This little tutu's going to stop you from doing it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Here's a huge hurdle and also a 10-turn clock.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of hate bears as well, and this is one of the best ones. Also continuing the relatively long and illustrious tradition of commander cards that see play and dominate old formats, with Baleful Strix and True Name Nemesis and Scavenging Ooze even being on that list initially, and of course Containment Priest. So excellent choice. Containment Priest. A lot of Vintage and Legacy players really don't want to see Containment Priest.
So the impetus of this list, again, it's the top 10 Modern Era. Modern Era meaning they're in the modern card frame, which means they're mirrored in forward. And it didn't take too many sets after Mirrodin for me to hit my number 10, because and when it was first printed, it didn't even see that much play, if any at all. And then one Mr. Mauschwitz, Mr. Zvi Mauschwitz, if you will, decided to show everyone that mana costs matter. And Aether Vial was born into tournament play. Aether Vial is a uncommon from Darksteel. It's 1 generic mana for an artifact that says at the beginning of your upkeep you may put a charge counter on Aether Vial. And then tap : you may put a creature card with converted mana cost equal to the number of charge counters on Aether Vial from your hand onto the battlefield. That is ridiculous. We have literally just broken our mana system. I don't know if you noticed there. We have completely bypassed any mana system necessary. All we have to do is count the symbols, see the Aether Vial, play the thing. Doesn't matter. No matter what it is, anytime, at instant speed, that's incredible. So
Can't be countered.
Yeah, just an activated ability to get you. And so Aether Vial, again, when it first was printed, no one really cared about it. No one really saw it. And then finally it was like, hey, this card is busted and lets you play multiple creatures in turn and is like your best turn one play. A card that started out as uncommon has been printed from the Vault Relics. Modern Masters was an invention in Kaladesh, and it came back in Iconic Masters as rare, and it's still over $30 a piece.
Yeah.
When you break the Magic mana system, you get a card like Aether Vial. It's a serious issue.
Yeah.
And if you want somebody to break your Magic mana system, Zvi Mauschwitz is the man to do it. Nobody likes a 1/1 for 1 that taps for a mana better than Zvi. Nobody knows how to ruin your mana economy better than Zvi. Man's a genius, has proven it time and time again, and Aether Vial is just one of the reasons.
Oh, yeah. Card is amazing. All right, let's move on here to number 9. Ruben, you got one of those?
I do have a number 9.
Okay.
And we've talked about this number 9 a lot because there are just some things that you need to be careful about when you're printing Magic cards, right? And mana is one of them. Mana reduction costs are always, always, always a problem. And that card is that sentence is perhaps no better exemplified than my number 9, which is just a common. Just has 4 words printed on it, just 4 plus reminder text, but costs 8. Like, who's gonna pay 8 mana, right? 8's a lot of mana. It's 8 mana, draw 3 cards, and delve, and that's the problem. My number 9 is Treasure Cruise, a common with the fancy boat on it, and ended up being banned in basically everything that it was relevant in.
Yeah.
So Treasure Cruise, everybody knows at this point that it dominated Standard, dominated Legacy and Modern, ended up getting restricted in Vintage, I think.
Yes.
Just an unbelievably powerful effect because you can fill up your graveyard so fast.
Yeah.
When it was first printed in cons, people were like, it's fine, right? It's not that powerful. It was legal and standard for a little bit. I think it was legal and standard the whole time, actually.
It was.
But then it got banned in Modern and Legacy and Vintage because you got things like fetch lands and brainstorms and lots of ways and Gitaxian probes and lots of things to fill up your graveyard. Oh, by the way, refill up my entire hand with more 1-drop spells like Monastery Swift Spear and Lightning Bolt and more 1-drop cards and more fetch lands and yada, 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 yada. Oh, by the way, more Treasure Cruises. Blue-Red Burn became the bane of everyone's existence. In Modern and Legacy, it became way too good in the older formats because, of course, the cards you draw in the older formats are that much more powerful. And it just became copies 2 through 5 of Ancestral Recall in Vintage, and copies 1 through 4 of Ancestral Recall in Legacy and Modern. So it was just way too good, way too card efficient, using a resource that you don't really use anywhere else. And that's just in the blue-red spells decks. I mean, it was also seeing play in control decks. It was seeing play in mid-range decks. Card was way too good, and Delve was just a problem from the get-go. And yeah, I think that Treasure Cruise exemplifies my number 9.
I remember going to GP Omaha shortly after Khans of Tarkir was released, and seeing the number of people that were playing Blue Red Delver. And Delver really hasn't taken off in Modern as much as people might like it to. And just seeing, I faced Delver so many times that day, and you're facing it, and it's just, the black green mid range decks have always had a home in Modern. And when you're drawing that many cards, it just invalidates the Thoughtseize strategy. So it basically pushed those decks out of the format, and just seeing the dominance of those decks and then facing them, and you're going, that ain't right. You're just watching it all go down and in forked bolts and everything, and it's like, it was just absurd.
I mean, when Delve first came back, and I was still doing the set reviews with Brad, and we saw this and we were like, it's just too expensive. No one's gonna play this thing. It's ridiculous.
Right.
It's also one of the really interesting cards that was arguably fine in Standard, but it was busted. I mean, busted in all the older formats. Any format past Standard, it was busted. But in Standard, it was fine. It wasn't like crazy. It was good. It was good. But yeah, this common draw 3 spell. As a common, guys.
Yeah.
Someone
this along with
no
I mean, I don't know if we'll talk about Dig Through Time later, but this along with Dig Through Time was just like, Delve is just too good. We can't with Delve anymore. All those cost reduction, like we just talked about with Ether Vial, cost reduction is just way too powerful and gets out of hand way too easily.
So, Aaron, what is your number 9?
My number 9 is also a sideboard card that had a huge impact after it was released. It was also released in a Commander set. It was first seen in Commander 2011, and it gave us another way to fight a very popular deck in Legacy and Vintage. We already have some tools against it, but this is a tool that I feel is just better because it's better at different points in the game. And the art is fantastic. It's a callback to a mechanic that we will never see play. We will never see again. My number 9 is Flusterstorm. So when this card came out, so it's 1 and a blue. It's an instant. Counter target instant or sorcery spell unless its controller pays 1. And then it has Storm. So you have Mindbreak Trap, which is cute, but Mindbreak Trap has to have that 3 spells cast caveat in order to really do its thing. Flusterstorm is great in the early game. Like, say they're trying to dig for something and you've boarded in multiple Flusterstorms. You can use it to counter their Brainstorm, or you can use it to counter their Ponder, their A-Call, to keep them off of what they're trying to do. And then if God forbid they get to do what they're trying to do, which is to go off with Storm, for the low cost of 1 blue, you can counter every single copy. And this card had a huge impact. Thank God with Iconic Masters, the price went down. It's currently sitting at $25, but it got as high as $100 there. Like, this was a pricey card. It desperately needed a reprint. And this card immediately became a staple in most sideboards that could run it. And it's just a fantastic card. And can I just say, though, the one bad thing I have to say about it, on Magic Online, pray to God you never get in a Flusterstorm versus Flusterstorm situation, because you have to single-handedly click every single copy that's not yours. And I did that one time, and I missed the one copy, and then the whole thing fizzled. And I was just like, damn it!
Not a cheap card even now. But apparently the normal market price at this point is $47.68. This is a $50 counter spell.
Commander version.
Yeah. And it's still highly played in every. I mean, it's hugely relevant in multiple formats, especially obviously the older the format, the more dependent on instants and sorceries. So it's huge in Vintage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's gotten down to around $18 if you want to find it elsewhere, and particularly for Iconic Masters. But good spell is good. Storm is broken. Storm and Commander, like, I could see more cards with Storm showing up in Commander sets because they just don't care. Like, whatever. You can have fun with it. As long go play their broken toys in your crazy formats.
Exactly right.
Hopefully they won't cost 1 blue next time and be infinite dollars.
And be common.
Crazy. All right. So let's see here. I get to do my number 9. That's fun.
Ooh.
Alrighty.
So my number 9 is, and we've spoken about this creature before, but it is certainly one of the most impactful. And I like for my list, what I focused a lot on was sort of what led trends, what defined eras, what when it showed up everything was different. You know, what I mean, what really hit you? Because like for me, what's the top 10? Well, the ones that that changed everything. It's like when Nirvana shows up, the different music's different. Just that's what it took. Magic 2011 had to live up to Magic 2010. Magic 2010, like, basically revamped Magic. We didn't know what was going on. Everything was crazy, and we've changed the way damage is working, and that's a Baneslayer Angel, and oh my god, efficiency, and creatures, like, really, really started getting great right around Magic 2010. But 2011, they decided to make a cycle, and the cycle was insane. And the cycle was led by a very angry creature, a giant, if you will. A primeval titan, if you will.
Oh,
2
great
green,
choice.
4 generic mana for a 6/6 mythic giant with trample. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, you may search your library for up to 2 land cards, put them on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. I did not see this one coming.
No, nobody did.
I felt like the black, the black one was insane. And
10 power for 6 mana?
Exactly.
That's crazy.
Inferno Titan was nuts. Sun Titan was bringing stuff back. Was arguing.
Oh,
this one was
Sun
just
Titan was the most hyped one, I think.
Yeah, and this one it got lands.
Yeah, it's fine.
Whatever. Yeah. And then they made this one land
Turns out
that cares about other lands. And then there was this other deck that cares about other lands. And then there was just it was so ridiculous. It's banned in Commander.
Yeah.
They banned
it.
it.
You get banned in Commander, boy, you done messed up.
Yeah.
Hey Ron.
You done it good. But Primeval Titan changed everything from its printing. They should have absolutely not have brought it back in 2012. That was a huge mistake in my opinion. Some things when they're so good, it's nice to have your awesome toys, but it's also nice for them to go away.
Yeah.
There are some interesting things going on with Primeval Titan and the Titan cycle in general. It's easy to forget that really no one cast creatures that cost 6 mana previous to the Titan cycle. Like, it just didn't happen. You either cheated 15 mana creatures into play, or you played 2 drops. Like, you didn't play 6 mana creatures. It just wasn't a thing.
Well, Wormcoil Engine showed up for a little while, and that was about it.
Look, I'm not saying it never happened, but it was very rare.
It was rare.
It was just not a thing that happened, and especially with Wormcoil Engine, when you were cheating it out with like Grand Architect and stuff, like you needed to be doing it on purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
But Primeval Titan led you to the 2/4/6. Like you went like Rampant Growth, Solemn Simulacrum, Primeval Titan. That was like a thing you were actively trying to do. And that's like the first time that in a long time where a deck was built around doing that, was built around casting a 6 mana creature. That was just something that wasn't done for a long time. And of course, it had a huge impact in Modern with the Amulet Bloom decks, got Summer Bloom banned. And it's seen play in the older formats as well. Yeah, it's just a spectacular example of modern Magic and where the power levels can go.
So let's move on here to number 8. And Ruben, what's your number 8?
I really like how our lists are coming together, right? Aaron's is cards that are printed that have impact on every format, especially the older formats, having huge power level across the entire swath of everything. Evan's is more focused on eras, which I really like as well, showcasing things that were super powerful in Standard. Mine is sort of in between. I was much more modern focused. I focused more on the actual modern format. And perhaps no card on the list that I have exemplifies a got printed, immediately blew the format out of the water, and then they had to fix it immediately, than Thought-Knot Seer. So the Eldrazi era of Magic, when Oath of the Gatewatch came out, and the Oath of the Gatewatch Pro Tour was modern, and there were 24 copies of Thought-Knot Seer in that top 8, ladies and gentlemen. 24 copies of Thought-Knot Seer in the top 8 of a Pro Tour. So Thought-Knot Seer cost 3 generic and 1 colorless mana for a grand total of 4 for a 4/4 Eldrazi rare creature. When Thought-Knot Seer enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-land card from it and exile that card. When Thought-Knot Seer leaves the battlefield, target opponent draws a card. So when it was initially shown, people thought this was, it's like a Tide Hollow Sculler, or for you young kids that have only started playing Magic in the last 3 days, Kite Sail Freebooter, right? It's along those lines. But instead of getting the card back, they draw a card. They don't get the thing back. So you take whatever is most powerful in their hand, and it just stays away forever. That's crazy. Now, the real power behind the Eldrazi deck, of course, was Eldrazi Temple and Eye of Ugin, which, of course, they banned Eye of Ugin not long after the Pro Tour, thanks in part to Thought-Knot Seer. This was perhaps the main Eldrazi that led the fight forward for all the Eldrazi decks. This and Reality Smasher were really the headliners, alongside a bunch of the other support creatures like Eldrazi Mimic and things like that. Thought-Knot Seer 4/4 for 4 was able to avoid Abrupt Decay and Lightning Bolt, so it avoided a lot of the main removal spells of the format, and was able to deliver the beats super quick, as early as turn 2 if you had a Temple and then an Eye of Ugin going out there. Just a super efficient creature that was able to not only put an efficient clock out there, but it start beating immediately. It was like having a Hate Bear, but it's 2 Hate Bears stapled together, so it was able to get out that much faster. So, and not to mention the fact that Eldrazi was a huge thing in Standard for a long time, and even beyond the banning of Eye of Ugin, Bant Eldrazi remained a popular archetype in Modern for quite a long time, and then scooting back to Aaron's most favorite format, Eldrazi in Vintage, White Eldrazi and Colorless Eldrazi in Vintage. Super powerful. Thought-Knot Seer able to steal, super powerful cards, including the Power 9 when you move that far back in time. So Thought-Knot Seer, I think, well deserving of a top 10 spot.
And also, I think another thing that made it so dangerous was that it came out at the same time as Eldrazi Displacer. And so if those two were out at the same time, you essentially had a soft lock where your opponent is just sort of looping it, always taking your best card. And, the fact that it's a 4/4, we've seen effects like this before. I think every block has like their Brain Maggot or their Mesmeric Fiend or whatever it might be. But they're little 1/1s that you really don't ever attack with because it's going to die and then they get the card back and that sort of defeats the purpose. But to have something like this that has that kind of effect and be a 4/4, you can crash in with that. Like, that is really relevant. And so this card broke the mold in a lot of ways that are just scary. I'm never happy to see one. And yeah, especially when you get to the older formats where you can run Ancient Tombs and Eye of Ugins and City of Traders, where you are almost never paying the full 4 for it, is just disgusting.
I think the best way to kind of give some people a way to think about this card is that you have a 4/4 for 4, that you're taking away their best card, and they have a 40% chance when they finally deal with this thing to just draw a land.
Right.
So 4 out of 10 times they're getting basically nothing. And then think of the times where they're actually getting a spell, but that spell isn't relevant or whatever. That spell they needed earlier, they wanted it late. Like, Thought-Knot Seer just kind of hit that perfectly, that spot that it disrupts your opponent. It's a very scary threat over a 4 or 5 turn clock. Because not to mention if you're in the older formats, you're damaging yourself with your fetch lands and all your other stuff, your Taxian Probes as soon as possible. So yeah, this thing puts on a clock. It disrupts your opponent. It is one of the best of this type that I've ever seen in terms of brain
and
maggots and whatnot.
The art is also very nifty
Art's
too. Just
gorgeous. I mean, as much as we hate this creature, it's a really good looking card.
I don't hate it. I like it. It's fine.
Yeah,
it's pretty to me. Aaron, what's your number 8?
If you're going to play a card in Legacy or Vintage that costs 3 mana, specifically 3 different kinds of mana, it better be good. And this card is good. This is a card that came out in a supplemental set. I don't know if they intended it to have the reach that it did, but this card has proven to be a really great way to attack sort of the blue strategies that Legacy and Vintage are known for. If you're in either of those formats, you're brainstorming, you're Force of Will, and if you're not, you better have a good reason why you're not. And you might not want to now that this card is on the block. My number 8 is Leovold, Emissary of Trest. Ruben, this is you.
I had a feeling that was going to be the number 8 on your list. I can't say I disagree.
So Leovold is from Conspiracy Take the Crown. He costs a black, a green, and a blue. He's a 3/3 Elf Advisor, a legendary creature. Each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn.
That's pretty awesome.
For formats that are ubiquitous with that, this is a really big hoser. And then there's the second paragraph. Whenever you
Who are you calling a hoser?
Whenever you or a
Sorry.
permanent you control becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, you may draw a card. This card immediately shot up there. I saw it going for as high as $70 back when GP Louisville was going on. Now it's down to
I'm a wanted man, Aaron.
Now it's down to about $45, depending on what site you're looking at. But this card had an immediate impact on the older formats, and that's always been sort of a bane of contention with these formats. In Legacy, we hear a lot of talk about Brainstorm being sort of this infection that's sort of taken over. That it's really a problem with Brainstorm and everybody's sort of drawing their brains out. And certainly in older formats, you have like you can cast Ancestral Recall, you can cast all these things, and this sort of really puts a damper on that. If you're playing Dredge and you haven't put any dredgers in the yard, just activating Bazaar. Yeah, you can't do that. And so this was, I think,
as soon as I heard I was needed.
But this is a card that, like I said, if you look at it for face value, I think some people would say too expensive, but there are decks that are falling all over themselves to play this deck. This is a big reason why Check Pile is popular in Legacy. I don't think you would ever see people jamming that many colored spells together for the hell of it without this card, and specifically Deathrite Shaman. And card just had a powerful impact on the older formats and has really changed the way that blue mages play the game.
And it gave Ruben like his best role yet. So
Exactly. Yeah. For those of you who are familiar, for those of you who are confused why I'm doing a voice right now, I did the voice of Leovold, Emissary of Trest, for Gen Dukeshi's Voice of All during the Conspiracy Take the Crown story arc. I played Leovold in a bit of a recording. And I adopted this sort of voice that I've decided is what
very good. It's funny because, well, first of all, it's nice that Conspiracy Take the Crown has one of those chase rares.
Yeah.
It is like average like $45 or whatever at this point. My favorite, I think, is the fact that he's just sitting there going like, thanks. He's kind of
extending the hand.
He's got his hand out like to shake. It's like GG. Because he's leading you right there. But it's efficient.
Good games and well played, opponent.
Oh.
But I'll take it from you.
Coming and going. That's the way he's got it. But my number 8 here is again, we hit big game changers on my list, and there's some that is not on my list, and I'm sure I'm going to hear about them. And Lord knows, cutting down to 10 was hard. But Wizards, they learn lessons. They do. And usually the player base has to teach them what they did wrong. And every once, they have these weird cycles. And back in the day, for a little while, for like a hot minute, there was Lorwyn, and there was Shadowmoor, and after Shadowmoor, there was Morningtide, and they had this cycle thing with tribal enchantments. But one of them, they didn't put tribal enchantment Rogue. They put tribal enchantment Fairy, and Bitter Blossom was amazing. It's a black and a generic mana for a rare tribal enchantment Fairy. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and put a 1/1 black Fairy Rogue creature token with flying into play. And that's all it did. Just every upkeep, you lose life and make dude. And it turns out that's insane. And it really turns out when you're able to play creatures that will give this shroud. Oh no, it's hexproof, right? Give it hexproof.
Right. No, it's Shroud. Scion of Una gave it Shroud. But you could also hide it underneath of a Mistbind click.
Which was also amazing.
Also a problem.
Because Scion of Una is a blue and 2 generic mana for a 1/1 flying flash creature that says other fairy creatures you control get +1/+1, and other fairies you control have Shroud. And so when they tried to destroy the Bitter Blossom, and you play the Scion of Una, or the Mistbind click, which championed a fairy, which this happens to be, everything goes sideways, and that deck was ridiculous. And I've seen that deck. I saw people win from 4-card mulligans because you know what you had? You had 2 lands and a Bitter Blossom. You had a land, you had a Mutavault, you had a Bitter Blossom, you had a Scion after on the next turn. It was ridiculous. So
I've seen mulligans to 3 win with fairies where they went like turn 1 Ancestral Vision, turn 2 top deck a land, play Bitter Blossom.
That'll do it. Like, this card was unbelievable. It was a format staple. It changed how control decks were working at the time. It created its own complete archetype that was just unbelievable. It didn't win its Pro Tour. If you would think of Pro Tour Morningtide and Pro Tour Hollywood, that was won by Elves. Sure. But it was in the finals, as it should be, and it ran the format, in my opinion, basically ever thereafter.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And it was so powerful that they preemptively banned Bitter Blossom from the modern format. It has since been unbanned, of course, and hasn't had the impact that perhaps they were expecting. But it was so scary and so dominant, and it left such a bad taste in people's mouths when they lost to it that it was on the initial banned list. Bitter Blossom's a great choice.
It is terrific. But we're going to move on here to number 7 because we got lots of cards to go through. I'm going to dedicate my number 7 to one Miss Erin Campbell. A card that speaks directly to her heart, directly to where she likes to do things. She likes to see magic, do things like this. It has this incredible mechanic. And it's one of those cards that when I learned about it, and it's my favorite because I'll never forget it. I saw this card, I read it, I thought about it, I called my buddy, and I said, oh my God, do you know what this thing does? It's called Life from the Loam. It's a green and a generic mana. It's a rare in Ravnica. You return up to 3 target land cards from your graveyard to your hand, and you dredge 3. If you would draw a card, instead you put exactly 3 cards from the top of your library into your graveyard, and if you do, return this card from your graveyard to your hand. Otherwise, draw a card. So this card is amazing. It's amazing for a whole bunch of reasons. One, there's the dredge mechanic that came from Richard Garfield, which is literally like a different way to play his own game, which was kind of insane in and of itself. And and get a high five from Aaron on that one. But the other bit is it was a very unique, interesting ability that it fuels itself in many ways. You can get it back, and you're able to continue kind of churn through things. So the cycling lands and stuff. I remember Sensei's Divining Top was a thing back then that was in standard, and so this could help fuel your Sensei's Divining Top, always seeing fresh cards, as well as getting back, some cycling lands in older formats and whatnot. And clearly it's created many of its own archetypes like lands in Legacy. But to me, I just love the design of it. I love how there's nothing but possibility with this card. It's not necessarily straightforward. Like, yes, you're getting lands. Yes, you can bring more lands back. But what it did for the game and the direction it took the game is what most impressed me and why it's on this list.
Yeah, especially if you're playing a deck that is entirely made up of lands. When you're playing legacy lands, the fact that you're dredging cards into your library is fine because you're probably going to be dredging lands, which you can then pick back up again from Life from the Loam. And so there's really no downside there. And you have the iconic art from Therese Nielsen, and I do have to kind of fact check you a little bit here, Evan. Actually, Mark Rosewater has admitted to designing Dredge. That is his mistake. That is his baby, and that's why he's always so hesitant to. He knows that it's terrible. He knows that it's broken, but it's one of his babies. And so, but yeah, Life from the Loam is great. It helps you to make sure you're hitting all your land drops if that's what you need to do. It was also a really neat way when Golgari Grave Troll was legal in Modern. It was one of the ways that we could get under Grafdigger's Cage because we could just sort of buy ourselves some time, hit 5 lands, and hard cast a Grave Troll and just beat in with a really big Grave Troll. And we can't do that anymore because of the recent ban. But that was the card that really let you do that. And I think it's a card that a lot of people forget even has Dredge on it. It's become so ubiquitous in so many other decks. I ran into an Oath of Druids deck that was even running it the other day. And so, but if you were to ask somebody, like, these are the same people that would be like, ugh, we hate Dredge, but we love Life from the Loam. Like,
right. it's the Dredge card that's okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, well, Richard Garfield was on the design team. May not necessarily made Dredge, but that's okay. Sure. You know what? They're all collectively.
It's a team effort.
It's the proverbial we designers,
It takes a village to make Dredge.
It sure did.
It takes a villain to ruin a mechanic or village.
It takes a village to burn one down, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it takes a villain to make Dredge. That's
Ruben, what's your number 7?
My number 7, and the last higher on my list is number 7. Is higher on somebody else's list.
That's fine. Aaron, what is your number 7?
Speaking of the Golgari, the best guild ever, don't at me. So when people like me who play older formats, when we see, there's certain words that when we see it on a card, we just sort of immediately think of older formats. Whenever we see a card talking about converted mana cost 3 or less, we immediately think about, this is going to be good in Legacy, it's going to be good in Vintage, it's going to be good in Modern, because these are formats where people tend to play very cheap, efficient spells. And so, when you see things like, Fatal Push, with little things. We really like that. And then this card came out, and this immediately spoke to us. And then it also happened to have a nice little clause about not getting countered, because these formats tend to be dominated by blue spells. And so even if you are able to cast your spells, odds are someone's going to have a response to it, and that feels really bad. And so this was, as Evan likes to say, the chocolate and the peanut butter. My number 7 is Abrupt Decay. So Abrupt Decay came out in Return to Ravnica. It's black and green. It's an instant. Abrupt Decay can't be countered by spells or abilities. It's first line right off the bat, which is music to my ears right there. And then it says destroy target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less. So in the past, when you see converted mana cost 3 or less, there's usually a caveat where it's like destroy a creature, destroy an artifact, destroy whatever. This was anything that wasn't a land. That's a very broad brush to paint with. And the fact that it can't be countered is gas. And so, this was a way for the black-green decks to really deal with things that maybe they wouldn't be able to deal with. There were a lot of targets for this back in Standard. This was main deckable. This has become a really great sideboard card in all the older formats, Modern, Legacy, Vintage. This is also main deckable. The Jund decks never leave home without them. The Abzan decks, Death Cloud decks, things of that nature. And it's just a great card. It just does everything you want it to do without any drawback. The art is really nifty too. It appears to be a Nidhic Cyclops that's being taken apart by fungus or mold, which is really, really great. And this card just had an immediate impact on all of the formats and really filled a niche that had never been filled before.
It's good. It's efficient. It kind of does what you want it to do. It's a little kind of, Wizards kind of plays around that kind of Pernicious Deed-esque type effect, and this is one of those real efficient, like, they can't make it any cheaper, and so they just made it uncountable, so it's going to happen. And, like, in Standard was destroying, like, Liliana of the Veils. Like, that was the thing. This thing can kill Planeswalkers. That was another big point.
Tension Spheres,
Yeah, so it answered things like enchantments and Planeswalkers in a color, particularly black, that has a real hard time with both of those types of permanents.
It's rarely dead.
Yeah, very exactly. And the fact that it could deal with counterbalance and legacy was a very big deal as well. It was one of the main things that was holding this color combination back. Was counterbalance was able to lock you out very easily, and this was able to take out counterbalances, which is something that really was not something that this color combination could do ever before, and nothing has been able to do better than this since. And this is the main reason. This and Lightning Bolt, which obviously Lightning Bolt won't appear on any of our lists because it was originally printed in Alpha.
Right.
This and Lightning Bolt are the reason to play Jund as a color combination in the older formats. And so it has a lot of clout. It has a lot of interest. It's a big part of Jund. It's a big part of Check Pile. Anything that has a black-green base is pretty much usually starting with Abrupt Decay as its a purpose for doing so.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to move on here to number 6. And my only higher is number 6.
All righty.
So, Aaron, what is your number 6?
I also have a higher at number 6.
Oh, well, I know we can't three-peat. Ruben, what's your number 6?
My number 6, I'm going off, not really off the rails, but I think that people probably would have picked a different card in this same ilk for me. But for me, this is the card that's going to go here because it's the one that's just right. Like, there are some that aren't good enough. There are some that were too powerful and then had to be banned. But when it comes to 1 blue mana, library manipulation, Serum Visions got it just right. And so that's why I have it at number 6. Serum Visions is 1 blue mana sorcery from 5th Dawn. Draw a card, scry 2. Very simple, very easy, but it's the backbone of so many decks.
Yeah.
Ponder and Preordain were too good for Modern. They had to get out of there. Brainstorm, again, too good for Vintage. Had to get restricted. I mean, it's tough to find that balance. Opt, we talked about in the Ixalan show.
Yeah.
It's fine, but it's not there. You know what I mean? It's not quite there. Similarly, Portent, similar to Ponder, but really not where you want to be when you're in Legacy. Serum Visions did it just right, and it's seen play in so many different types of decks, from Storm decks and other combo decks like Ad Nauseam, to control decks like Jeskai Control, to mid-range decks like you have sort of the Grixis mid-range kind of mix-up garbage. It's just a really good way to smooth out your draws. It's a really just excellent card to flashback with Snapcaster Mage or flashback with Past in Flames. It helps your game plan later on. It functions as part of your mana base, just like all of these card fixing cards do. And I think it's just a really good flag bearer for the 1 blue mana library manipulation spell. And so I think that even though it gets a little bit less respect than some of the other folks who are in the 1 blue mana, draw a card, fix your top of your library archetype of cards, this is the one I'm going to put at number 6.
It also helps you determine what hands are worth keeping. Like there are some hands that you wouldn't normally
Absolutely.
keep, but if you got a Serum Visions in a blue, you can try to make it work.
Yeah, Serum Visions in and of itself being so efficient, being kind of the right speed, it's at sorcery speed, it's still good. You're drawing the card first, so you're not letting your scrying first and then drawing the card, so it's not overpowered in that way, and it's absolutely ridiculously frightening from Modern Masters 2017 with this weird Phyrexian dude, and there's needles, and it's scary.
Love the new art. Love the new Phyrexian art.
I tend to like this card with the temples, specifically in Ad Nauseam. So like you play your temple first, you get your scry from that, and then if it's a card you really like, you keep it on top. Then you play your Serum Visms.
Your biggity visms.
Go into the blue for real. Then you play your Serum Visions and get that card. Or you can safely get that card out of the way, get it on the bottom, and get yourself a better Serum Visions. And so there's ways to play with that too.
All right, so we're going to go here to the top half of our lists. I'll go ahead and get started here with our number 5. Because our number 5 is a card that I actually didn't have it on my initial list. And then I went back and I felt bad that it wasn't in the top 5. So I put it in number 5. Because there's few cards that can show you the power of a color, can show you the power of things that people have asked for. And when they finally got them, you're like, oh God, maybe there was a reason we never had this. And maybe there was a reason that it was only printed in Modern Masters 2017 just to try to keep the price down. Because in Zendikar, I love me some Mike Turian. And Mike Turian is an R&D, and he loves aggressive decks. And man, did he make a killer with Goblin Guide. Goblin Guide is a red mana. Uno red mana for a 2/2 haste creature. I mean, right there, full stop. 1 red, 2/2 haste. That's what people have been asking for forever. What could the drawback possibly be? Well, whenever it attacks, defending player reveals the top card of their library. If it's a land card, that player puts it into their hand. So, okay, whatever.
40% of the time, your opponent draws a card.
Basically, it created these draws where turn 1 Goblin Guide, turn 2 Goblin Guide, swing with 3 Goblin Guides is
and
basically
no one has
game
ever
over.
beaten that.
I've never seen anyone actually come back from that. Even if they cast Pyroclasm, like they've been damaged so much that they just get eaten away. This card is bananas. This card was an unbelievable force. It's amazing in the formats that it's been in. Like if it's been in Modern and absolutely in the burn decks and Standard, it was just incredible from the moment it showed up. And it was super fun to play with. Don't get me wrong. I loved playing with this broken toy, but it did nothing good for my opponents or their faces. This card is sweet, and when I'm, I go to Mike Turian and I go like, why did you do this? And he's like, it's fun, right? And I'm like, yeah, it's fun.
I am never happy to see this card. If I see a turn 1 Goblin Guide, I'm like, oh, hell.
Don't worry, everybody. I got the rest of this commentary as the Red Mage. It's not on my list, and I feel a little bit bad about that now that you've said it out loud. I'm like, how is Goblin Guide not? But totally agree. Love it. It was so good that they made it a GP promo.
Yeah.
It's just a super fabulous fun. I mean, I love it because you get to attack. Even if you get Pyroclasmed on turn 2 after attacking with 3 Goblin Guides, each Goblin Guide has dealt an average of 2 2/3 damage. So like that's just almost a bolt anyway, and then your opponent had to waste a card to get rid of them. And that's not really a waste when it's a 3-for-1, but they had to spend a card and their second turn and 2 mana to get rid of them all. It's the reason why Burn is a deck. I mean, honestly, Burn wouldn't really be a deck if you didn't have Goblin Guide. Like, you just have a bunch of lava spikes in your deck, which are fine, but Goblin Guide usually can put out 4 damage by itself before it's dealt with, on average. It's just something that needs to be dealt with immediately. It can even switch up duties and be on chump block duty once it gets in for its 2 or 4 damage to extend the game a little bit, get you an extra draw step to draw your last lava spike to kill your opponents. It saw play in mono red. It saw play in Boros. It's seen play in Zoo. It's just a spectacularly aggressive. It's the aggressive card.
Yeah,
it is so good.
It's so good. Aaron, what's your number 5?
My number 5 is also higher. It is my last higher of the night, though, so I'm back in fighting form after this.
All right. Ruben, what's your number 5?
you know how special you have to be to not only dominate one format, but dominate two formats, but almost by itself. It was so dominant that it later is so iconic that they turned it into an invocation, and they printed it in Iconic Masters. That's how powerful Thoughtseize is.
Oh.
Thoughtseize is busted. It is the best discard spell that's ever been printed, and it's probably not close.
No.
For 1 black mana, you have a sorcery that was originally printed in Lorwyn, which, incidentally, and not connected to Thoughtseize at all, because I played Kithkin in Lorwyn, is my favorite set. But Thoughtseize is so good that it had to make an appearance. Target player reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-land card from it. That player discards that card. You lose 2 life. That is 1 mana and 2 life is a rate I am completely willing to trade my opponent's best card for every single time. It is absurdly powerful. It just ruins games, especially if your opponent's mulliganing, and your opponent mulligans like 20% of the time, so maybe more, depending on their deck. Right. So if you're able to trade 1 for 1 with Thoughtseize, as Trund decks and any deck with counterspells and draw really wants to do, that's great. So Fairies leaned heavily on Thoughtseize, Mono Black Devotion leaned heavily on Thoughtseize, and both formats were dominated by those 2 decks. Beyond Standard, it sees playing plenty of decks. As you move back in time, discard becomes less good because you have Brainstorm to be able to hide your goodies on top of your library. And so Thoughtseize sees less play, but it is still uber powerful. Still maintains a very impressive price tag, particularly for the original Fairy digging into your ear art. And it's just a spectacularly good card, and I don't think anything like it will be seen in the near future. Let's
not forget, you can also target yourself. Right, if you are that reanimator player who's looking to get that reanimation target in the bin, you can do, tap your 1 black mana for Dark Ritual. You can spend 1 mana on a Thoughtseize, hit yourself, and then spend that other 2 mana on your Exhume or your Reanimate and get that thing back. That's a little corner case there.
My most impressive extended PTQ season was with Bubble Hulk.
Oh, no.
Thoughtseize my Protean Hulk out of my own hand, and Footsteps of the Goryo in short order thereafter. Many times. I have definitely Thoughtseize myself a number of times. And if your opponent has like a Leyline of Sanctity in play, and you, for some reason, want to get additional cards into your graveyard for whatever reason, or lose life or whatever, you can Thoughtseize yourself, which we've seen in the finals of Pro Tours in the past, in order to just grow Tarmogoyfs or get additional cards in the graveyard. Yep, or grow Death Shadow, or get more cards in the graveyard for Delve. Plenty of corner case scenarios with Thoughtseize.
So I've told this story a few times, but I got to tell it again because this is the card that you get to tell that story for.
Yeah.
When I was first brought out to the Pro Tour, and I was making the Magic Show, and I got lucky enough to be voted as the storyteller part of the Invitational, which also let me play at Pro Tour Valencia. Spoiler alert, didn't do that well. But what I did get to do...
If I recall, you won a game in every match that you played.
I brought every single match was a best of 3. I won a game in every single one.
There you go.
Yeah, they were close, but I was always on that wrong side. Like I think I went like 11-2 or 2-11 or something like that. Either way, it also let me meet R&D for the first time ever. I never met any of those guys, and it was insane. And I got to meet an R&D member, and at the time, Lauren was there, and Thoughtseize was out, and it was insane, and it was clearly ridiculous. And I went to the R&D member, and I was just like, why is this not uncommon? It's so good. It goes in everything. And the R&D member just looked at me and said, Evan, it's the best card in the set. And I was like, oh, Magic's a business. Right. That's weird. And I know it's a little naive and all, but at the time, sure. I just, I was just Magic. I love Magic for Magic, and Magic amazing, and why are we doing these things that we're doing? And it was just one of those just tiny little innocent moments where it's just Bill's got to get paid, right?
Right. Well, if you want it printed at Uncommon, they tried printing Thoughtseize at Uncommon. They called it Inquisition of Kozilek. And it still was $1 billion, and then got printed at Rare later. So they tried, and then that didn't work either. Now Thoughtseize is still way better, obviously, but but yeah, that's just a good lesson. That's just good learning. Is what that is.
So we're going to move on here to number 4. And my number 4 is it's part of a cycle and a very important one, certainly in the modern era. But I wanted to pick this particular this particular card of the cycle because it kicked everything off. When we were in the sad times, when we were in darkness, and Saviors of Kamigawa,
long ago,
Saviors of Kamigawa was busy soiling the tables of LGSs everywhere. Wizards, they shone a light in the dark one day. They said, hey, remember when Magic was awesome? Remember when Magic was super sweet? You remember when we could play lands that had 2 different types on them? And they just, one day, out of the blue, was like, Temple Garden. And they just put Temple Garden. And they didn't say anything. They just made it like the card of the day. And like nothing else. And everyone lost their minds. There was just the joy. Like, dual lands just weren't a thing. Like nowadays, this is an old hat. No. When this showed up, everything was different. There was this weird symbol in the background. What was that thing supposed to be doing? Oh my God, it's got both types. So, but 2 life, I'll pay 2 life for that. That's incredible. It's amazingly balanced. It's everything you wanted it to be. Temple Garden is a rare from Ravnica, City of Guilds. It is a land, forest, plains, as it were. It taps to add green or white. As it comes into play, you may pay 2 life. If you don't, it comes into play tapped instead. So it was immediately dubbed as Shocklands. Yeah. Shocklands, they're just, we don't even think about it anymore. Shocklands are Shocklands, and every time Ravnica shows up, we get more Shocklands, and isn't that great? But no, when you were a Magic player, on the day they spoiled Temple Garden, it was a momentous occasion. It was
a big deal. Yeah, absolutely.
I even recall the announcement. I wasn't around for original Ravnica, sadly, but I do remember the footage when they announced. I think they were at one of the cons, like maybe Dragon Con.
I think this was one of the PAXs. Yeah.
But they had announced that we were going back to we were doing Return to Ravnica, and I remember the excitement from that, and a lot of that excitement was from the people knowing that if we're going back to Ravnica, shocks are happening again. And so if it's anything like what the Return to Ravnica hype was like, I can't even imagine what the original was like.
It was amazing, and I appreciate the Return to Ravnica mic drop when they were just and one more thing, and they just put Return to Ravnica on the screen.
That was great.
That was insane.
The other exciting thing about Temple Garden and its brothers and sisters is that it has the ubiquitous name. It doesn't depend necessarily on going back to Ravnica. Now, the only times it's been printed are Ravnica and Return to Ravnica, but theoretically, a card like Temple Garden could see play in any plane that has both a temple and a garden.
Oh, yeah. So that's the joke,
it could theoretically. Right, of course.
The joke is it could be on any plane, but the reality is they only put it in the Ravnica blocks.
Right. I mean, so far. But they have the option open to them. It's not like they named it Is It Boiler Works, right? Which is the other cycle of land from Ravnica that has pretty much universal love. I love me a bounce land. But, of course, the shock lands having a much wider impact throughout Magic.
Ruben, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is my only red card on the list. Wow. And that's saying something for me. And I once again, apologies to Goblin Guide. I don't know. At this point, I can only apologize.
You're sleeping in the cat box, Ruben.
I know. It's just I've been burned by myself for burn. However, the only red card on my list is not a red card in the sense that you think it's red, but it is a hugely relevant card in that it's the card that has the only archetype that has 1/2 Modern Pro Tours, and then was swiftly banned thereafter. My number 4 is Splinter Twin. Probably the only aura on the list.
Yeah,
I would wager. Again, I have a very modern-heavy list, and this one won 2 Modern Pro Tours, including the first one. Yeah. 2 colorless and a red. Enchantment Aura from Rise of the Eldrazi. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature has tap. Put a token that's a copy of this creature onto the battlefield. That token has haste. Exile it at the beginning of the next end step. While in Standard, this comboed with Deceiver Exarch to great effect. And in Modern, can also combo with Pestermite or Zealous Conscripts. And was often paired alongside Kiki Jiki, the Mirror Breaker, which could also combo with Restoration Angel. And so you had all these different types of builds of Splinter Twin. Tarmo Twin became a very popular archetype as well, usually in the hands of Patrick Diekman. Splinter Twin just sort of was something you always had to look out for. It was a turn 4 kill in Standard. It was a super effective control combo deck in Modern, and it was just a very potent archetype that to this day, most of those decks are still referred to as twin decks because of this card. Splinter Twin had one of the farthest reaching impacts on all of the Modern formats, hasn't really reached back into the older formats, and certainly dominated Standard for a time, which is saying quite a thing because at the time you had decks like Caw Blade and then later on Birthing Pod were archetypes that you could use to fight against Splinter Twin. So the fact that this was able to fight on their level is something else.
I was there when Patrick Chapin first essentially busted it. He wrote the article. He was like, "Hey, did Wizards know they just put an infinite combo in Standard?" And he put this card next to Deceiver Exarch, and then out went the tournament scene to officially make it their charge to get Splinter Twin on that creature to immediately win the game by making millions and millions of copies. And it's one of those, it's a little bit ubiquitous. Again, it kind of flew under the radar for a long time. It wasn't until New Phyrexia until you're like, oh, hey, busted. And that's what happened.
And once again, with my non-traditional usages of cards, I've put Splinter Twin on Acidic Slimes in the past, Obstinate Baloths. The number of times that I have used Totem Guide Heartbeast to go get a Splinter Twin and then put that Splinter Twin on my Totem Guide Heartbeast is non-zero. I used to play a twin pod deck that would pod up Deceiver Exarchs and combo through that to go. And then the top of that chain was 6-drops and 7-drops, but the 5-drop was Totem Guide Heartbeast to go get more Splinter Twins, which I certainly loved. Splinter Twins just, it won a Pro Tour, and then several years later, with almost no card changes, won another Pro Tour. So it's got to be on the list.
So we're going to move here to number 4. Aaron, what is your number 4?
When Ruben was talking about Thoughtseize, we talked about using Thoughtseize as a way to cheat creatures into play, going the reanimation route and targeting yourself and making yourself discard a card. But if you're going to cheat in a creature, you can't reanimate it. But if you're going to cheat anything, if you're going to Oath of Druid something, if you're going to Through the Breach something, if you're going to show and tell something, I can't think there's no better creature. There's no one else in the multiverse that you want on your side than Emrakul the Aeon's Torn. It is just the pinnacle. Why would you want to cheat in anything else? Even Enchantress wants to get on board with this action. So this is 15 colorless generic mana from Rise of the Eldrazi. Emrakul the Aeon's Torn can't be countered.
Turns out.
When you cast Emrakul, take an extra turn after this one because, of course, flying protection from colored spells and Annihilator 6. When Emrakul is put into a graveyard from anywhere, its owner shuffles his or her graveyard into his or her library. So you can play with this in Goryo's Vengeance. You can respond to the trigger. This is the top end for a lot of the sort of cheaty creatures deck. Obviously, Oath of Druid, Show and Tell, Enchantress, Through the Breach decks. If you can be cheating in a creature, it's usually a toss-up between her and Grizzlebrand. But 9 times out of 10, Emrakul is just where you want to be. Usually it's just game over. Most people won't make you play it out. But she's just everywhere you want to be. She's one of the baddest bitches in the multiverse, if not the. The art is just amazing. You just see this giant thing with little arms. Both arts. I mean, but Emrakul really did set the standard, and it's just the top of the heap.
I mean, Mark Tadine really killed it. It's great because the whole point of the set was like, how big can we go? We have a playable 8-drop in common, and it was playable, legitimately playable. Yeah. And Emrakul was just kind of built to break things. Like, it's stupidly huge. It's got an incredible trigger. You remember, like, when most people don't, I guess, they used to give you really expensive cards for the pre-release. Yeah. You got a free Emrakul the Aeon's Torn for showing up at the Rise of the Eldrazi pre-release.
Alternate art foil pre-release Emrakul. Yeah.
Everybody.
Oh, yeah.
They're like,
everybody got one.
The best creature in the set? Here you go. It's all right. You gonna go break something? Here you go. Here's an axe. See you later.
This is the poster child for how far can we push one card. Like, how many abilities can we put on something? It doesn't matter how much it costs. This card could cost 35. It could cost $1 billion, and it wouldn't matter because either you're going to make infinite mana or an arbitrarily large amount of mana, like you do in Enchantress, or you're going to make actual infinite mana with some sort of combo, or you're going to cheat it into play with Sneak Attack, with Goryo's Vengeance, with Through the Breach. And so this was, how much can we pack onto one card and still print it? And they went too far with this one. It's banned in Commander, hashtag banned in Commander. That's a great way to get on this list. If you're banned in Commander in the Singleton 100 card format, boy, let me tell you how powerful that has to be, right? It's just an absurd card. The fact that when you cast it, you take an extra turn is absurd. And most of the decks that use this don't even care about the extra turn. They're just dealing 15 damage and making their opponents sacrifice all their crap. That's just crazy. And oh, by the way, if your opponent's playing mill or whatever, turns out you can't get milled anymore. I've put Eldrazi just in my regular deck in Cube when my opponents are trying to mill me out with, Jay's Memory Adept or whatever. And it's just like, oh, lols, nice brain freeze, idiot, Emrakul Shuffle. Emrakul's just so busted. It's so busted that they printed another Emrakul and it got banned.
In an attempt to make it less powerful. Like, they were like, we're not going to do that again. We're going to mute it. And it was still too good. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, that's a great choice. Obviously, this is the best creature ever printed in terms of raw power.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, however you want to look at it, Emrakul was ridiculous. And
maybe not pound for pound. Like, pound for pound, obviously you're going to get some one-drops like Goblin Guide. But if we're talking raw power, nothing is beating Emrakul ever.
Banned in Commander.
Just isn't
Hashtag
happening.
Banned in Commander.
Banned in Commander.
Moving here to number 3. Ruben, what's your number 3?
I share a number 3.
Ooh.
Ruben is
Wait,
Ruben! Mine's the same too.
Well, do tell.
Aaron, would you like to go first or shall I?
I think you should.
All right. Our collective number 3 has a lot of things I like and a lot of things that Aaron likes. The things that I like on this card are being able to cast it at instant speed, which is always great. I like doing things during my opponent's turn. It gives you lots of options. It attacks, it blocks, it Julianne fries. And for Aaron, it has the word graveyard on it. And so obviously she's going to love it. In addition to the fact that it's just a super powerful card, super fun, and maybe the most iconic card from an iconic set. Our collective number 3 is Snapcaster Mage.
Yeah.
Snapcaster Mage is a colorless and a blue, rare human wizard from Innistrad. 2/1 with Flash. When Snapcaster Mage enters the battlefield, target instant or sorcery card in your graveyard gains flashback until the end of the turn. The flashback cost is equal to its mana cost. Aaron?
Never been reprinted as far as I can tell. It's still sitting at $50, $55. If you are playing blue...
It was reprinted in Modern Masters 2017.
Was it? Okay. I didn't see that on the site I looked at, so that's my fault. But
different art in Modern Masters 2017. Kind of has like a bit of like a Chow Yun Fat looking dude, and then you got the Weekend art as the RPTQ promo.
Oh man, the RPTQ.
Correct. Okay.
The RPTQ promo, yeah.
Still sitting at $50+ though, despite those reprints. And if you're playing blue, you're definitely playing with this card. I mean, it's a win condition in and of itself. You know, there are control decks that are 4 Snapcasters, a bunch of spells, and some lands, and God help you. And Bolt Snap Bolt is a thing. At worst, it's still a 2-body. It can block. It also essentially gives you additional copies of your spells, specifically sideboard cards. This and Surgical Extraction is a nightmare because it's essentially free. And so, if when you're in the vintage formats, cards that are restricted are only restricted-ish. You can only have 1 copy of Time Walk, but you could still cast Time Walk more than once thanks to this card. And it's just insane. Like, this is one of those cards where you have to wonder, like, what were you thinking?
Like, guys, it just didn't need Flash. And as I understand it, that was added very late in the process.
And it's funny, like, when you see, like, cards after that, like, they have, like, what was the one, Archaeomancer that costs, like, 4?
You look at 2 for 4, yeah.
Yeah, you look at Torrential Gear Hulk, which costs, 6 or 7, and you can sort of see the other iterations down the line where Wizards seems to have learned their lesson from this. It's like, okay, we're gonna charge you 6 for that next time.
It was amazing. Right. They unveiled this at the first Modern Modern Pro Tour. That was when they spoiled it. Aaron Forsyth on camera live was like, Snapcaster Mage, we'll never forget, the first pre-order price for this was $6. This started out as a $6 rare pre-order.
It's a rare. It's a rare from the Mythic era.
Yeah.
So we had no excuse to not load up on Snapcaster Mages. It was also pretty hyped because this was Tiago Chan's invitational card.
Yeah.
The last invitational card that's been printed thus far. It's just, and it's arguably it's certainly one of the two most powerful blue creatures ever printed in a color that is often considered to be the most powerful color based on all the things that it can do. And this gives you so many options that it is just kind of ridiculous how under the radar it was when it first came out.
When it very, very first came out, there was sort of like this sort of awakening that happened over time.
Yeah.
Where it was like, oh my God, this card is ridiculous. Oh my God. Like, and then the RPTQ promo where it can't feel its face when it's flashing back your cards. It's really a problem. But mainly, Snapcaster Mage's incredible value coming and going. It was awesome back. I mean, in Standard, it was ridiculous. It fueled like the mono blue decks or whatever at the time, the mono blue Delver stuff. And efficiency on top of efficiency turns out to be a pretty amazing Magic the Gathering card.
Yeah, it turns out when you staple a 2/1 to any spell, the spell becomes even better. The other thing about Snapcaster Mage is that you just get to cast your sideboard cards twice. You get to cast your Surgical Extractions twice. You get to cast your Nature's Claims twice. You get to cast your Forked Bolts twice. Every best instant and sorcery in your deck, you get to cast again, which is absurd.
Which is amazing. This was my number 6, by the way, for those keeping track at home. But we'll move on here to my next choice here, if I can pull it up correctly. And it turns out Darksteel was a pretty busted set, all in all, because Darksteel has no less than 2 spots on my list. And this was a creature that lived in a time, now, when the rocks were soft, people, you could stack damage, okay? And I know this is weird, and if you've never heard of it, this is going to be great. Stacking damage means that when in combat, you say so-and-so blocks so-and-so, and you go, okay, damage on the stack, which means now damage is going to be assigned to those creatures. If either of those creatures goes away, that damage still happens. That's silly. Isn't it weird that when damage happens and the creature's not there, that the damage still happens? Yeah, exactly. Right. That's why they changed it. Arcbound Ravager is a 2-mana rare 0/0 artifact creature from Darksteel. It says sacrifice an artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on it. It has modular 1, which this comes into play with a +1/+1 counter on it. When it is put into a graveyard, you may put its +1/+1 counters on target artifact creature. So if all of your lands are artifacts and all of your creatures are artifacts, except this one guy called Spoils from the Vault. No, not Spoils from the Vault.
Right.
What was it? Disciple of the Vault?
Disciple of the Vault.
Disciple of the Vault. That says whenever one of your artifacts goes to the graveyard, your opponent loses a life. It turns out when you give them the best equipment of all time, and plus an incredibly awesome draw spell, that also has affinity for artifacts. Affinity decided to become a thing, which was a huge cost reduction mechanic. So when you combine the artifact block with cost reduction mechanics, you break everything. And this damn near broke Tournament Magic. Like Tournament Magic took a nosedive when Affinity was the best deck and you could play with all of the goodies. And they had, what was the cranial
plating?
Cranial plating. Thank you very much. That's what I was trying to think of. When just imagine that you are playing Tournament Magic in this era, okay? And there's this weird Affinity deck that just starts winning everything and has all the tools, and then they literally preview cranial plating, and you're like, what? Wow. You just can't. It was just like, what are you doing? I don't even know what's happening. Cranial plating shows up in the next set in 5th Dawn. All hell breaks loose. No one wants to go play in Tournament Magic anymore because it's just a bunch of Affinity Mirrors and Tooth and Nail decks or whatever. In the same time, Skullclamp's running around being a complete maniac. Like, it was just insane. And so Tournament Magic just got decimated, and it's all being led, and still in Modern to this day, is an incredible deck with Arcbound Ravager at the heart, the beating heart of this thing.
And vintage.
Yeah. And
Ravager Shops is huge. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, I think what really pushed it over the top, though, was the way that it radically changes the combat math. All of a sudden, Ink Moth Nexus was a thing, and to where you only needed to do 10 damage. And so, by itself, yeah, you can put a cranial plating on it, or you can just sacrifice all your artifacts and put everything on an Ink Moth and just win the game that way. Walking Ballista came out, which again changed the math, where all of a sudden you're sacrificing all these artifacts, putting counters on something that becomes really big, and then you're able to shoot them down with Triskelion or with Walking Ballista. This changes the way that combat math is done. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to combat with Affinity and I think I know how the chips are going to fall, and then there's lines that the Ravager opens up that are just a nightmare to deal with. And I remember the first time I ever dealt with this card, I was playing Living End. And I attempt to go off with Living End, and I think I've got him. Yeah. I've got a graveyard full of fatties, and I think I'm on my way to Christmas Land. And I have Living End on the stack, and they go, in response, boop, 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 boop. Living End resolves, they get everything back. And I was like, and then when I discovered that they can use that to exile my bridges, they can just be like, sacrifice this. And it's like, I'm never happy to see that. And I remember Sam Stod had a column a while back where he acknowledged mistakes that had been made. And there was a column on this where he's like, yeah, it probably should have been 3.
Yeah. You think?
It's just dumb. It's just such a mistake, and I'm never happy to see it.
And my
this
favorite
was my sorry.
Oh, yeah?
By the way, this was my number 10.
Okay.
Oh. Well, my favorite was that Wizards didn't even catch it. They caught it when someone inside the building was like, I'm going to try that Ravager thing with the Affinity deck. And then they were like, oh my God.
Oh, bother.
What did we do? And then it was clear that there was a turd in the bed and someone had shat it. And
you think about dominant, people playing Standard right now sometimes complain that Teamer Energy or 4-color energy is too ubiquitous. Right. It's like 45% of the metagame. That's too much. Then Jund, by the way, was about 50% of the metagame in Standard. Then Cawblade was like 55% of the metagame in Standard. That's a lot. Ravager Affinity was 80% of the metagame in Standard, and the other 20% were green decks with Molder Slug only trying to beat Affinity decks.
Yeah.
You don't know format dominance unless you're talking about Standard Affinity.
Yeah.
It is just, by the way, creature type beast now. You can sacrifice it to your Ravenous Baloths if you really wanted to gain 4 life. In addition to its other uses. They gave up all the Arcbound creatures creature types when they did the Grand Creature Type update for some reason. I don't really know why this one's a beast, but who cares?
Well, imagine, and again, let's just keep going just for a tiny fraction here, because in the same breath that they said, hey, here's cranial plating for the best deck of all time that didn't need it at all, they said, we printed you an answer, guys. We got the answer. Tell Jihad Justice.
Right,
guys,
there it is. We
just
did it.
Dropping those bombs. Oh my God! Tell Jihad Justice.
Seal the envelope. Put it in the mail. It's time to go home. We did it. We solved the problem.
It was a green and a generic mana for an instant destroy target artifact. Scry 2, and they were just like, guys, artifact deck's done. We gave you what's up. I mean,
And the super lag answer, of course, was Kataki War's Wage, which came out in one of the Kamigawas in the fashion of 9 to 12 months later, a great Sable Stag style. Way too late, unfortunately. But yeah, Ravager. When you say Ravager, it's so ubiquitous. It's been in both Modern Masters sets, I think. It's obviously a huge player in multiple formats to this day.
It was in Modern Masters, the original.
The original Modern Masters.
Yes.
Okay.
So only 2 reprintings beyond the Kaladesh Invention. So it's still a $40 card because it's amazing. But we're going to move on here to number 2. And I'm going to go ahead and get my number 2 out of the way so you guys can talk about your number 2s, because mine's real easy, okay? Mine's real easy. When I first go to a pro tour, first time in my life, going overseas, first time in my life, incredible. And one of the things I have to ask every pro there is about this card. When Brian DeMar starts his article with this card not even being in the list, and I just can't handle it. Tarmogoyf is my number 2.
Coming for you, Brian DeMar.
I just
need the wrestling promo there.
Man, it's great because you can always go back and just kind of read the Tarmogoyf story and see where it started. Now, Tarmogoyf, for those who may not know, is a rare from Future Sight. It is a green and a generic mana for a star/1+ star. It is a Lurgoyf, and its power is equal to the number of card types among cards in all graveyards, and its toughness is equal to that number +1. And they also got to do the cool thing in Future Sight where they mentioned Planeswalker, they mentioned Tribal, and no one had seen either of these card types before. So that was amazing. But at first, no one really thought this card was good. I mean, silly looking back, but it started out like a $2, maybe $3 rare. You know what I mean? Like, it might be good in aggro decks, blah, blah, blah. You can still go back and see my, there was an article that Brian David Marshall wrote that they interviewed me about, and I was like, well, maybe if you try to put some stuff in the graveyard, you know. Yeah, you know. Maybe
turns out you don't got to try to put things in your graveyard.
Yeah, as it turns out, when it counts both graveyards, it counts all the different types. This card has been reprinted at this point 4 different times in every Modern Masters. Just checking here. It was in Modern Masters 2015 and 2017. Yeah. And it is still $100-something card, depending on where it is in the metagame. That's how incredible Tarmogoyf is. But at the end of the day, it just attacks and it just blocks. And that's
well, it even spawned its own mechanic. You know, Delirium, I think, was influenced by this. You know, the ability to, you know, take stock of how many different types of something you have in your graveyard and have it affect or augment things that you already have. You know, Emrakul, we talked about Emrakul the Promise, you know, Emrakul the Promised End, you know, costing 1 less for every type of something you had in your graveyard. I think it says something that not only is the card good, but the card, you know, helped influence a mechanic that also proved to be good. You know, we put in Black-Green Delirium was a standard powerhouse for a while, and I think that says something as to the power of this card.
I mean, it has its own sort of community memes around it. You know, there was the foiled Goyf in the top 8 of the GP. You know, Pascal Maynard,
that's an amazing moment. Absolutely, a highly you know, we always talk about these moments with Lightning Helix or with Rakdos' Return or Bonfire of the Damned. That's a Tarmogoyf moment for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny because the moment is him drafting a card. You're just like...
My favorite moment of that moment, by the way, is Pascal, like, looking at the back of it. Being like, is it still in mint condition? Because that might affect my choice of whether... Which is something it's hashtag relatable, is what that is. It's also got a really, really iconic flavor text. What doesn't grow dies, and what dies grows the Tarmogoyf, which I love.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Tarmogoyf was my number 7. It's tough to not have it in your top 10. Brian DeMars, I'm coming for you, Brian.
Coming for you, buddy.
Yeah, but no, I mean, it saw play in Standard and was a dominant force in Standard, particularly in the Gruul aggro decks at the time. And at the further you move back, the more relevant it becomes until you get to Vintage, of course. But it's super relevant in Modern and Legacy. It was very popular in Standard, and again, I think it's the impetus for why they even made Modern Masters to begin with. Was basically they were like, we need to reprint Tarmogoyf. How do we reprint Tarmogoyf? I guess we'll make Modern Masters. I think that's the main reason why Modern Masters was even started to begin to be made.
Also,
that's my opinion, at least.
Also, dollar bills. I was thinking,
dollar bills, y'all.
American currency was one of the big reasons for that set to exist. Okay.
Sure, absolutely. Exchanging currency for either goods or services is certainly a relevant topic, but I think that one of the things that they wanted people to exchange their goods and currency for was so that they had the chance to open $200 bills in the form of Tarmogoyfs or $600 bills in the form of foil Tarmogoyfs.
It's true.
But yeah, absolutely. Tarmogoyf starting out as kind of a joke, kind of a like, look at these hilarious things we put on this card together. Isn't this adorable? Oh, accidentally the most powerful thing that's ever happened.
Ruben, what's your number 2?
My number 2. In Brian DeMars' article, he sort of lumped it together with a couple other removal spells, which I didn't really think was fair to Path to Exile. 1 mana removal is at such a premium that entire decks spawn as a result of it. Lightning Bolt being the chief example. Entire decks exist because Lightning Bolt exists. But Lightning Bolt was first printed 25 years ago. Fatal Push was printed about a year ago, a little less. It hasn't really had its chance to shine to the point where I'm going to put it in the top 10. Path to Exile was originally printed in Conflux and has proven itself to be the second most powerful removal spell in Modern in that time. Just behind Lightning Bolt. 1 mana removal spell. Entire archetypes splash white just for Path to Exile. the fact that, I mean, if you put white in Jeskai for other reasons, like, you're more than welcome to, but the reason why white is there is for Path to Exile. If you have Abzan, I mean, it's cute that you can play other white cards, but the reason why it's there is because of Path to Exile. It is the raison d'etre for white cards in a lot of mid-range and control decks, and even aggro decks. So that's why I have Path to Exile as my number 2. It's a white mana instant, uncommon, originally from Conflux. Remove target creature from the game. Its controller may search his or her library for a basic land card, put that card onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle his or her library.
Has been printed no less than 11 times.
Jesus.
If you're counting the Friday Night Magic and the WPN Gateway
and they're
thing.
still like $3 a piece.
Oh, they're still like $6 to $7 a piece.
Right. And they still, yeah, absolutely. It's a crazy powerful card. You want 4 of them, or at least access to 4 of them in every deck that you play. The original Todd Lockwood art is super iconic at this point, with the Leonin sort of turning into petals.
Oh yeah.
When you are discussed somewhat favorably with Swords to Plowshares, you know you're doing something right. And Path to Exile, I think, is, I mean, it's tough for me to not even have it at number 1. It is so good. It's
so good. I recall that Rosewater was not super happy with it because he doesn't like sort of one mana answer everything all the time. But I do think the drawback is definitely, I think it really is well balanced for what it is, what it was, and what it is today. Now, Fatal Push is actually being blamed for Tarmogoyf going down in price and going down in playability, which is fine. You know, removal spells have ripples, as they were, and particularly when they're as good as that one. But Path, was definitely the original. Oh my God, I can't believe they reprinted that effect at that mana cost.
And the other thing about Path that's so unique is we talked about like old growth dryads last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I mean, usually giving your opponent a land is a death sentence. Usually that is horrendous. But when you get to do this super powerful effect for this low of a cost, turns out it's worth it.
Especially in a format like Modern, where Tron is a thing, to deal with a Wormcoil engine, to deal with an Eldrazi, sometimes you have to weigh it, and it's also a format where people are less likely to play basic lands, where, you're less likely to see your opponent benefiting from that drawback.
And Path to Exile probably lent its name to renaming Removed from Game to Exile. It probably renamed a zone, which is another huge, far-reaching impact.
Absolutely. Aaron, what is your number 2?
My number 2 is a card that does so much for so little. One of the themes throughout this show has been effective, efficient spells, 1 mana removal, like Path to Exile, 2 mana beaters, like Tarmogoyf, and just really getting the most for very little mana. And I can't think of the card that exemplifies this more than my number 2. It was recently banned in Modern because people finally woke up to what it was able to do. It is currently restricted in Vintage. It's fine in Legacy, but that could easily change. My number 2 is Gitaxian Probe. So this is from New Phyrexia. This is one of the cards that people like to use as evidence that Phyrexian mana is busted. So Gitaxian Probe is a sorcery. You can either choose to pay 1 blue mana or 2 life as per the Phyrexian mana cost. And you can just look at you can look at target player's hand and draw a card.
That's what you do.
Which seems innocent enough, but then you think about it in the what you're getting for so little of a cost. It's effectively free. But when you get perfect information. If you're playing a deck like Infect, you have a way of knowing that your opponent has nothing, and so you're free to sort of go all in and just kill them. It helps you sort of sculpt your hand. It helps you kind of build your plan as to what you're going to do. Again, if you can Snapcaster it, that's gross. In the Storm deck, sometimes you just play them to know when to be able to go off, or just
hugely important for Storm,
which is hugely important. But sometimes you just chain them just to get your Storm count up. Be like, I'm at 6. Storm 15. Like just to get there. And so, this really shows you what you can do with this ability. It's seen play in all of the formats, including Standard. It's just a frightening card. And I think I was one of the few people who was happy that it got banned in Modern, because it just enabled really, really dumb strategies. And again, it just does so much for so little, and in a way that I think very few cards do.
Phyrexian mana, again, being another thing, much like Delve, anytime you have cost reduction, it is going to be busted. It just is. It just always is. I have never seen it not completely bust open formats to the point where Gitaxian Probe was part of a cycle, kind of 1 mana cards of various colors, and every single one, I think, saw at least some standard play. Mutagenic growth, gut shot, surgical extraction. There were other examples that I could put out there as well.
Sure. Mental misstep.
Mental misstep. Yeah. Apostle's Blessing being 2 mana, with one of them being Phyrexian mana. I mean, half of the Infect deck that was a player at various times, and perhaps even the most powerful of the modern decks for a long time, had 20 cards of various types that had Phyrexian mana in them. Gitaxian Probe itself was in Pro Tour winning decks of multiple different types, including the Splinter Twin decks. The fact that you get to cast it for free is ridiculous. 2 life is not a cost that I'm willing to say is a cost, all right?
Yeah.
Particularly when you can choose to pay a blue or not. Fabulous choice, obviously, super good, and well deserving of this high spot on the list.
And I would just note that whenever Wizards tries to make mana not matter, like for Aether Vial, for example, and for Gitaxian Probe, you break things. Things break. There's a reason those mana symbols are up there. It's not just to look pretty. You need those things.
Yeah.
So let's go to number.
Do look pretty.
Let's go here to number 1. Ruben, what is your number 1?
My number 1. Now I have no Planeswalker card types on my list, but number 1 really kind of might as well be an honorary Planeswalker for all of the things that it can do. It is the most played multicolor card in both Vintage and Legacy. Can I help you?
No.
Oh,
no.
What was that?
She's upset. She knows where you're going with this.
Oh, she knows where I'm going with this?
I know where you're going with this.
Of course. It has a multitude of abilities. It was banned in Modern based on how powerful it is. It is extremely potent at every point in the game for the low cost of one of Aaron's favorite tribe. I will remind you. Her favorite guild is Golgari. And this is a Golgari card, and it is Deathrite Shaman. For the low cost of either a black or a green mana, you can get yourself a rare elf shaman from Return to Ravnica. It is a 1/2. For some reason, it needed 2 toughness, and has the following 3 abilities. That's right, folks.
God.
Not 1, not 2, but 3 abilities. Tap, exile target land from a graveyard, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Pay a black tap, exile target instant or sorcery card from a graveyard. Each opponent loses 2 life. Pay a green tap, exile target creature card from a graveyard. You gain 2 life. This card took over, not immediately. It took a little while. It was a slow burn with Deathrite Shaman. I recall when there was an episode of Above the Curve at StarCityGames.com being recorded, and Jerry Thompson and Brad Nelson had a discussion about this card. This one might not have even made it to air. I think that this one might have been the episode 0 pilot. And Jerry was unimpressed with Deathrite Shaman. Jerry was like, I don't see it. I'm not sure. Lo and behold, less than 3 months later, he would unveil Shardless Bug featuring Deathrite Shaman, take over a Star City Games Invitational with his creation of Shardless Agent into Ancestral Vision featuring Deathrite Shaman, and this card took over every format. It got itself and even got Bloodbraid Elf banned. Bloodbraid Elf suffered the sins of Deathrite Shaman in Modern, to the point where 30% of a Modern Pro Tour was dominated by Jund, which was just an amalgamation of cards. It was just a pile of good things. Deathrite Shaman is so powerful. It's so good. It's so low cost. It does everything and more, and it also makes Aaron mad. So obviously, I would.
I have said it before. I have said it on the record. If they ever ban this card in Legacy, I will literally dance naked in the streets. This card has caused me so much pain. And I get it. It's the reason why Legacy is as greedy as it is right now. Why check pile is a thing. And people like to say, when people criticize Deathrite Shaman, people like to say, well, it's just a Birds of Paradise. It's just a Noble Hierarch. Yeah, but this game can single-handedly win you the game. Like, even if it's not doing the dork thing, it's still pecking away at you. If you're able to get 2 of them, God help you, because it's a really devastating clock, and it does things that no other bird can do. And yeah, if this were banned, you could probably put a Bird of Paradise in your deck and still probably play check pile if you wanted to. But it's the fact that it takes over games, that even when you're not doing anything, you're still doing things. You still got to put things in your graveyard. So does the other person. And if you can use that to feed yourself and or even use it to attack them, it's one of those cards where I just want to. I would love to be on the fly on the wall in R&D when someone was like, "This is fine." Like, why does it have 2 toughness? Why does it have 3 abilities? Why?
Yeah.
I mean, it's rare that you can say that one Gerald Thompson, Esquire, has paid for your lunch, but he paid for my lunch over this card.
Yeah.
He said he was there in the office and he was just like, I just don't get it. I don't think this is a very good card or whatever. And I was just like, lunch? And I was like, it'll be in the top 8. It'll be in the top 8. And he gave me like the top 8 the next 3 or 4 weeks or something. I was like, it'll be in a top 8, in the next month. And he was just like, all right, good. And like the first weekend, it was in like 2 of the top 8 decks.
And ironically enough, it didn't see much standard play. Like it had like some fringe play, but it was nowhere near. It didn't do anything near what it did in every other format. In standard, it was cute, but in everywhere else, it was just too much.
Well, there were no fetch lands. There was no. Right. I immediately put a land in the graveyard and let me boost forward the next turn and whatnot. So, this card's power is clear. I felt, and nowadays it's certainly even that much clearer. But Aaron, what is your number 1?
I said at the beginning of the show that one of the criteria that I look for in all of our top 10s, I like seeing multi-format cards that make a splash in as many formats as possible with an emphasis on the older formats. And I can't think of a format that this card has not made a dent in. There's probably some obscure fringe format that I'm not aware of, and maybe someone in the YouTube comments will be nice enough to educate me. But standard, when it was standard legal. Pauper. Modern. Well, they try in modern, but it's like the fetch in modern. They keep trying to make fetch happen, and God bless them. Legacy. Vintage. Delver of Secrets. I mean... Nice. The name a format that does not care about this card. You can't. It is just ubiquitous on a level that I've never seen before. It costs 1 blue. Creature, human, wizard, 1/1. We have the famous art of the bald person with the bug, and then eventually becoming the bug. So at the beginning of your upkeep, you can look at the top card of your library. You can reveal that card. If it's an instant or sorcery, you flip it, and then it becomes the 3/2, the flying insectile aberration for the low cost of 1 mana. You have things in blue that are able to manipulate the top card of your library, brainstorm in response. You can even ponder and stack your deck to where this is most likely going to flip. And this enables sort of this protect the queen kind of style strategy where your deck is 4 Delvers, a couple Snapcasters and a bunch of spells and game on. Like, this is what you're doing. And it's just been a powerhouse in every format. There's just nothing more efficient than this. And like I said, when I think of cards that have an impact, I don't know of a format that was not affected by this card in a way that I just don't recall. And still to this day, Legacy Delver, there's so many, it's so ubiquitous in Legacy that you don't even bother trying to describe it. It's like they used to say Grixis Delver, Bug Delver. It's just Delver. There's so many colors, there's so many things happening. Who cares? There's Delvers in it. It's fine. Vintage Delver has made a bit of a comeback since the recent restrictions. Obviously, it's still a big thing in Pauper. It was a nightmare in Standard when it was going around. And if we're talking about impactful printings of the modern era, I think Delver has to be it.
Delver has done incredible work from the moment it showed up, even though and if you look up Forgotten Lore, Delver of Secrets, I did a whole history episode on just this one card. I showed when it first showed up in tournament play, the embarrassing set review with myself and Jerry Thompson, as it turns out, where we sat around and was like, I don't know if this is going to be that good and limited. And we're like, yeah, I know, right? And like next card, like, hey, this is going to define like literally every format for the next couple years.
To be fair, it is garbage and limited.
Yeah, it was bad and limited. And we were looking at it clearly through the wrong lens, as it were. But for 1 blue mana to do what it does, to give the power that it does, to warp formats around itself and make things like Gut Shot playable so you can just kill their Delver before it flips.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a thing.
Yeah. Also, it is the most tournament playable flip card. Arguable, of course, with things like Jace Vryn's Prodigy, but, while cards like Huntmaster of the Fells have fallen by the wayside, Delver of Secrets continues to be the most played card that doesn't have a Magic card back.
Oh, yeah.
And that I don't think that can really be understated, because when Innistrad came out, people were like, there's no Magic card back on this card, and these cards, Magic is dead forever. And then Transform, turns out, is an acceptable thing now. We just sort of let it happen. And the treasure map cards from Ixalan, for example, leaving a legacy. Delver of Secrets in particular, inspiring 2 more cards that both continue the story. There's a 6-part story across Delver of Secrets into Insectile Researcher into whatever the final form of it is. Cards don't really have that kind of clout. Yeah. And the fact that this card was able to tell its story, to transform its legacy, pun sort of intended there, but it's so ubiquitous. You're right. It's just everywhere. It is so powerful, so potent. Everybody has a Delver of Secret story where they were just like, oh, the guy blind flipped it 5 games in a row, or I couldn't flip a Delver to save my life, or anything in between. Delver of Secrets is a great choice for number 1.
So for my number 1, and it's fun because all of our number 1s are totally different.
Yeah.
My number 1, I can imagine that Ruben has deduced what my number 1 happens to be, because I'm guessing it's his number 10, but I don't know. We'll see.
Number 10 was Arcbound Ravager for me.
Okay.
So
You're right.
I guess I don't have your 1 on my list.
Well,
I think we have this. I think your 1 is one of my hires.
Fair enough. Okay. So, back in the day, when they were trying to hype sets, social media wasn't quite as ubiquitous. It was there. It was fine, whatever. And they did this actually just recently, a callback to something they did 7 years ago, I think it is now. And they made a huge version of the card. They cut it up. They sliced and diced it. They sent it all over the country. And they let people take pictures of it and figure out what in the world this crazy thing did, because it was nuts. And it was sort of like a Christmas gift, because it happened at the very end of the year, as I recall. And it created a card that was so powerful, it literally led the Magic brand. It defined what Magic was. It was the best card. It was a card that has a song written about it. There's no other cards that have songs written about them but Jace the Mind Sculptor. I myself have probably referenced Jace the Mind Sculptor more than almost any other Magic personality person who talks about cards, because Lord knows I've said so many things about this card, it's ridiculous. Jace the Mind Sculptor is a 2 blue, 2 generic mana, 3 loyalty Planeswalker, a mythic rare from Worldwake. And for its +2, you may look at the top card of target player's library. You may put that card on the bottom of that player's library. For 0, you draw 3 cards and then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. -1, return target creature to its owner's hand. And -12, which, by the way, was upped in number at the very last minute. -12 was exile all cards from target player's library, and then that player shuffles his or her hand into his or her library. Jace the Mind Sculptor is better than all. Jace the Mind Sculptor has taken itself, and it's still, to this day, a 60,
Shout out to Patrick
70...
Chapin and to Spruik for Jace the Mind Sculptor, better than all.
Yeah, you can go look up the song. It is banned in Modern for a reason. It always comes back around. It's like, would you just unban Jace? Yeah. Like, this card is not fair. There's nothing about this card that is remotely fair for the cost that you're paying for it. And when your opponent has lost the game, but they don't know that they've lost the game.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting, sort of facet of Magic. And not since Sphinx's Revelation. Before, it was Jace the Mind Sculptor. For Sphinx's Revelation, sometimes you lost the game, but you didn't know it for about 5 turns. Jace the Mind Sculptor, same thing. You're like, oh man, you lost that on turn 5. I don't know if you knew that, but they fate sealed, Fate Seal and being look at the top card of your opponent's library and doing something with it. Like, if they fate sealed back on top, you're done. You're done, son. Yeah. We're all done here. Jace,
this was my number 5.
Nice.
I forgot to mention Deathrite was my number 6. So I apologize for that. I was so lost in my blind rage for the card. I forgot to tell you.
If I would have rated my top 20, this would probably be like my number 13. It's right up there. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's the card that all other Planeswalkers are held to the standard of, especially if, God forbid, they ever have 4 abilities. Poor Chandra. When Torch of Defiance came out, like, there were some people that were like,
Chandra's great!
And then they were like, she ain't no Jace.
She good.
I mean,
and you know,
she might still be Jace though. She's seen a lot of standard play, so who knows? But
let's
that's
not go
a
that
tough
far.
bar to
Jace
cross.
is great at every point. It's good when you're ahead. It's good when you're behind. It's good in the middle. I mean, it's just a phenomenal card. And I, for one, think it's fine. Like, I think it's fine for Modern. I really do. So
It was banned in Standard, and I literally made a video that said it's never going to be banned in Standard because it is the poster child of Magic. Jace is the Mickey Mouse of Magic the Gathering. It is who, by default, the players want to be. They want to be Jace.
And when you picture Jace in your head, when you close your eyes and think, what does Jace look like? You picture Jason Chan's art on Jace the Mind Sculptor with the runes appearing in front of him, with the glowing eyes and with the billowing cloak. That's what you picture. That's what they really pushed it for World Wake too.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this was Zach Hill's Swan Song. This was, I think, Mike Turian's.
Mike Turian's, yeah.
Big encore, and they really pushed a lot of the cards, and none of them were pushed more than Jace. It takes a lot to make a 4-mana card worth it in Legacy, let alone Vintage, right? It takes quite a bit, and Jace did it. If you take away any one of Jace the Mind Sculptor's abilities, the card still sees play. Literally any of them. If you take away the +2, you still just play that card and then don't even read the bottom line of text. The Brainstorm ability at 0, not only is it Brainstorm and everybody knows what the text of Brainstorm is, but it doesn't spend itself, right? At 0, you are expending no resources to Brainstorm. So if you're able to Brainstorm twice, you're actually garnering card advantage beyond just the ability, which is insane. The ability to protect itself with an unsummon that you can use 3 different times is completely busted. You might as well just not play 4-drop creatures in your deck. Having a built-in win condition allows you to have freedom in deck building with more removal spells and more card draw and more library manipulation and things like that. The ability to jump up to 5 mana was hugely relevant in Standard. Being able to protect itself from hasty creatures like Bloodbraid Elf was the big one in Standard at the time, but also things like Slash Panther in Vintage. It was able to protect itself from stuff like that that was popular, trying to be exactly the thing that was trying to kill Jace. Jace the Mind Sculptor, better than all, doesn't even encompass all the things that you can do with it. I would be interested to give it a test run in Modern just to see. Because, if you're going to unban Golgari Grave Troll for a minute, and if you're going to, if you're going to unban Bitter Blossom, that worked. We unbanned, Ancestral Vision, that was fine. Let's give it a shot. And then immediately ban it when it doesn't work. I'm cool with that. Just don't do it for the Pro Tour.
Oh, my God.
I think that Jace the Mind Sculptor is an excellent choice to have at number 1. It is the most iconic Planeswalker, and it is super fabulously necessary to be on somebody's list.
All right, so that was our top 10 cards in the Modern era. You'll see them on the screen now for review, if you'd like to check that out. We want to hear from you about what card we didn't talk about, and there are a ton of them.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll select our favorite, and Ruben will rather, to win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go...
I want to really quick thank Brian DeMars for setting off the article. I know we're joking a lot about his choices and stuff, but you know what? Our lists are wrong too, and I'm sure our commenters will tell that to us. But I wanted to thank Brian for giving us the topic, because he's a great dude and a very smart man, and it's always fun to argue with people that love and respect.
Absolutely, and Brian is terrific. But that said, let's see. Before I go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you, Evan.
Hey, buddy. We're going to go to our final slide. So I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, CardHoard.com, my co-hosts, Aaron Campbell and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching. I hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Visit our website at MagicMikesPodcast.com that exists thanks to our Patreon supporters. Or follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe, do everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at Twitch.tv/MagicMikes, on Twitter at MagicMikesCast, on Reddit at Reddit.com/r/MagicMikes, on Facebook at Facebook.com/MagicMikes. Talk to us privately at MagicMikesPodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at MagicMikesPodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week for another Top 10 episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.